Becky Ivory with the Three Great Rights Institute, and I am so grateful for those of you who are joining me today. This is kind of exciting. We're going to be talking about a subject that I am really passionate about these days. It's something that has really changed my life in a lot of ways in the last couple of years, and it's taken me a while to put a name to it, to try to figure out, what steps do you help people see when they've made such a big difference in your own life. And I've chosen to call this, change your beliefs, change your life, because I've learned that when you can learn how to get rid of your old beliefs that aren't working for you anymore, your limiting beliefs, and create new beliefs, it is a powerful experience for change in your life. I started making a list of all the different jobs that I've done in my life. Now, it kind of is a little bit embarrassing. I've done everything from, I've babysat people with dementia. I started my own voice studio when I was 15. I've run that for about 35 years. I've run an export company. I've managed a law firm, 3 nonprofits. I've been a sign language interpreter. I've taught junior high choir. And never in my life did I think that I would do so many different kinds of jobs. But as my youngest daughter got ready to leave high school and go on, and I knew that I was going to have the freedom to choose what I wanted to do, I had to ask myself, what is it I really want to do? And I realized that of all of the jobs that I've had, the parts of it that I have loved the most has been that ability to help other people overcome their challenge, to see the best in themselves, to recognize their potential. And so that's what I do. That's why I do what I do. It's why I'm here today. So, on the personal side, I've been a survivor of divorce, of childhood sexual abuse. I've dealt with an eating disorder, and all of those things have led me to have a lot of experience in recent years with things like passing legislation to protect kids and things like that. And so if you're wondering what in the heck is Becky now doing as a coach, trainer, and speaker, it is because I really feel passionate about helping other people overcome their challenges and recognizing that your challenges not only don't have to hold you back, but they can actually be what propels you forward. So there's things that I'm still learning, right? But Ken always says, even a blind pig will find an acorn once in a while. So that's me. And when I find an acorn, I really want to share it with you. So that's why we're here. Like I said, I call this presentation Change Your Beliefs, Change Your Life. And what I want to help you do is stop buying into your old beliefs, right? We buy into our limiting beliefs. And instead, I want you to begin investing in your liberating potential. That's the goal of today. Now, I promise you before this 90 minutes is over, you're going to have all of the tools that you need to begin creating new beliefs. I promise. You're not going to have to jump through a lot of hoops or, stand on your head, give me all your information in order to get it. You're going to walk away with all 10 steps that you can begin implementing immediately to begin changing one area of your life, okay? Now, some of you may want to work with me on a more formal basis than this afterwards, and I'll share that information with you at the end as well, so that if you want that information, you'll have it. Okay, so if you're joining me by computer, you're going to be able to see the slides that I'm working with today, and if you're joining by phone, don't worry about it. I'm going to keep you in the loop. It's easy to understand without the slides, and it's designed to be completely accessible by phone, so just relax, enjoy yourself. If you want to take notes, I'm kind of a note taker, but let me encourage you, only take notes on the things that come into your heart and your mind that inspire you, that are specific to you, because I'm going to give you a copy of these slides and stuff. You'll always have those written down, but pay attention to those things that seem to be speaking just to you. And like I said, I'll be recording it. You can listen to it as many times as you want. And when we're done, we're going to have some time for Q&A. And if you have some questions that you want to ask, I would love it if you would get in the queue and ask those. But also if you just find some things that really are powerful to you, or some thoughts and ideas that you want to share with the other callers, you're totally welcome to do that on the Q&A part. Now, I just want to say this really quickly. Because we're working with technology, sometimes glitches happen, right? So for any reason I become disconnected, like if I'm talking and the next thing you know I fall off the call, the meeting will actually continue without me, and I can always dial back in. I don't anticipate that being a problem because I am hardwired into the internet right now, but I always like to say that just in case something happens. If you get kicked off, just call back in and we'll be good. Okay, so Oh, what am I doing on step 10? See, those of you who know me, that doesn't surprise you at all. Let's go back to the beginning. Okay. All right. We're talking today about creating your new belief, and the purpose of this is to go from knowing what we're supposed to be doing to doing what we're supposed to be doing, right? They say that the biggest gap in our life is between what we know and what we do. I think that's completely true. You know, how many of you already know exactly what you should be eating in your life? And yet, how often do we actually do it? Or you know that if you were to save more of your paycheck every month, that in 20 years from now, you'd be really glad you did. And yet, sometimes we just don't get around to doing it, right? You all know that if you were to improve your communication skills, the way you talk to your boss, your spouse, your children, your nieces, your nephews, that your relationships would improve. And yet, how often do we work on our communication skills? So I'm going to share with you some things that have changed my life. They've changed my business. They've changed my health. And in general, they've changed my happiness. So I know that sounds kind of far-fetched, but my guess is if I were to ask each of you right now, if you've ever heard something, just one thing that actually changed your life, my guess is all of you could raise your hand. And that's because sometimes our lives can be changed with just a simple piece of truth that we haven't heard before. And so I'm hoping that today you're going to have that experience. But when we have that shift that changes our life, it's because we have a change in something I like to call our learning model. Now, a learning model is just the way you learn to do something. Everything you do is based on a learning model, literally everything. The way you put on your clothes, the way you eat, the way you tie your shoes, the way you fight, the way you make up, the way you do everything, all based on a learning model. Now, sometimes we have learning models of success, and sometimes we have learning models of failure. All of us have both, things that we are really good at it and things that we just aren't. And the goal is to move more of our things out of the realm of failure into more of models of success, right? Now, when we have a model of success, oftentimes we can do that thing on autopilot. So let me give you an example. How many of you have ever driven to work and you park your car in the parking lot and all of a sudden it dawns on you, you have no idea how you got there, right? Isn't that terrifying? It's a little bit freaky. And yet the reason that you can do that is because you have a learning model for how to drive the car, and specifically you have a really strong learning model for how to drive it to work because you do it all the time. You don't have to think about it anymore. Now, don't get me wrong, you should be thinking about it, right? But your brain isn't relying on you thinking about it in order to get it done. So each model, whether it's a model of achievement or failure, gets you a result, good or bad. We want models that achieve success, right? Absolutely. Now, I promise you that whether you and I continue to work together in a mentoring relationship after this or not, I promise you're going to be able to take this home and use it immediately, okay? So there's 3 things you need to know before you can go from just knowing something to actually doing it. In other words, there are 3 things that create a learning model: awareness, beliefs, and principles. Every learning model is held together by these 3 things, and lasting change requires achievement and understanding in all 3 areas, not just one. So first of all, let me ask you if you can ride a bike. Now, most adults can ride a bike, but not all of them. So for those of you who can ride a bike, you have a learning model of success, right? And for those of you who may not be able to ride a bike, you have a learning model of failure. Now that's it. It's not good or bad. There's no judgment. It's just a fact. Now for those of you who can ride a bike, would you agree with me that before you could ride a bike, you had a learning model of failure? Yeah? First you couldn't ride a bike, and then you learned how and had a learning model of success. That makes sense, right? Now if I ask most of you how you learned to ride a bike, you would probably give me a deer in the headlights look, because you probably can't even remember exactly what you did to learn how to ride the bike. often when we don't know how we learn to do something, we say, well, I just learned how. But nothing ever just happens. We know that everything has a cause and effect in the universe. But because we aren't consciously aware of how we did it, we use words like just, and we say, well, I just did it. But the truth is, you changed your learning model by increasing your awareness, changing your beliefs, and learning the principles to riding a bike. Okay, I'm going to prove it to you. Let's start with awareness. Before you could ever ride a bike, you first had to be aware that there were bikes, right? Now, my grandbaby's only 8 weeks old right now. She has no idea that bikes even exist. So I can guarantee you that she has zero chance of riding a bike right now for a lot of reasons, but that's one of them. So somewhere in your life, you saw that bikes existed. You realized that you wanted one. Now, don't miss out on the simplicity of this. You cannot learn to ride a bike without first realizing that it's a possibility for you. And there are things that are possible in your life right now that you are not even aware of. There are things in your life that are possible right now that you're not even aware of. So take a moment and think about that. What could be possible for you in your life that you cannot even imagine right now? What could be possible at work, at home? What's possible with your health or in your relationships? Now, once your awareness has been expanded and you know that there's a new possibility for you, the next thing that comes into play is belief. And that's what we're talking about today. So when you got your first bike, if you're like me, chances are that you weren't totally sure you'd be able to ride it. Mine was too big, and I had to put it in the gutter so that my feet could reach the curb on one side and the street on the other. And I didn't totally believe I could ride it. So I had to borrow someone else's belief that I'd be able to ride that bike. Most of you probably had somebody who coached or mentored you through the process of learning how to ride a bike, and you borrowed their belief that you could do it. So for me, that was my best friend, Stacy. Those of you who can see the picture, this looks like a total mugshot on my 8th birthday. But Stacy was the one that taught me to do a lot of things in life, and one of the first ones was ride a bike. So belief is really important, and there's two phrases I want you to remember today. First of all, belief drives behavior. If we don't believe that we can ride a bike, we're not likely to even get on and try, or we'll give up really quickly if we do. And here's something else I want you to remember. We face in the direction of our faith. It's true. If I believe I can turn my company around or increase our sales, if I'm going to be faced that direction, right? I mean, if I believe that I'm going to be faced that direction, I'm going to be working on finding the pain points in my company or working on the solutions. But if I think that nothing will ever change, there's nothing I can do to change it, well, I'm just going to keep doing the same old, right? And it will become a self-fulfilling prophecy. So what we have faith in has a huge impact on our success or our lack of success, okay? So here I am, borrowing Stacy's belief, and it's time to get on the bike and give it a try. But you know, the very first thing that happened to me, I fell straight into our cactus garden. So my father possessed, or I don't know what possessed him, but he planted a cactus garden right next to the driveway, and that was my very first fall. And you know, part of us, back when we were scared to get on the bike, part of what made us scared is because we knew that falling was part of the process of learning to ride a bike, and we all didn't want to fall. Because you don't know if it's going to be that fall where you just, put your foot down on the street and catch yourself, or if it's going to be a fall like mine straight into the cactus garden. So it's not until we're willing to pay the price that we're going to get on that bike. So I bet there's plenty of you listening today who know there's going to be a price to pay for what you want. And some of you have felt what it's like to be stuck because you haven't been willing to pay the price yet. And some of you are on this call tonight because you are finally ready to pay the price to get what you want. But you will never get what you want until you're ready to pay that price. Okay, so now I'm on the bike. All right, I pulled all the cactus needles out of my backside, and I'm on again. Now, Stacy was never one to take no for an answer, so getting back on the bike when you're with Stacy is, that's your only choice. So I get a pedal or two in, then I fall, and I pedal, and I fall, and I pedal, and I fall, and I pedal, and I fall, and pretty soon I pedal, pedal, fall, and then I pedal, 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 fall, and I start to get a feel for a really important principle called balance. Up until this time, I thought I knew about balance. After all, I could stand on one leg. I used to practice headstands against the front door every night, but that kind of balance meant holding still and staring at one spot and trying not to move. But this new kind of balance, well, that meant going faster. I mean, it was a totally new concept for me, right? The faster I went, the better my balance. And I started to learn about things like muscle dexterity and hand-eye coordination and other principles that I needed to ride a bike. So let me ask you, how many of you listening today have ever tried to walk a tightrope? Now, I promise you, I have never tried. I doubt I will ever try to walk a tightrope. But I have tried to walk on a gymnastics balance beam when I was in junior high, 7th grade. And my teacher and all 6 of my spotters will attest to the fact that tightrope walking should probably not be a part of my repertoire. But doesn't walking on a tightrope require balance? Yeah, it's the exact same skill set as riding a bike. And yet, it's different because it's a higher degree of skill that's required, right? The principles are the same, but much more demanding. So maybe some of you are like my friend Stacy, right? You had zero fear, and you thought right from the beginning, well, I can ride this bike. So you jump on your bike, and you start pedaling, and 8 feet later, your teeth are hanging in a tree. Is that a model of success? Absolutely not. It does you no good to stand up with a broken elbow and missing half your teeth and say, hey, look at me, I can ride a bike. I got news for you. No, you can't. You see, I don't care how much awareness you have or if you believe you can ride a bike if you haven't learned the principles to riding a bike. If you don't know the principles, you're not going to be able to ride the bike. It takes all 3. So let's go back to our example of walking the tightrope. Does that take balance? Yeah, we already said it does. Does it take muscle dexterity? Hand-eye coordination? You bet it does. Well, if you can ride a bike, you already have all of those skills. So what's the matter with you wimps? Why aren't you out there making your way across a tightrope? Well, do you think just maybe you might have a belief problem? Yeah, I know I sure do. I have a problem believing that I can do it, and I also have an awareness problem because, like I said, I am completely aware that I don't ever want to be on a tightrope. So you see, in order to have a model of achievement, you must have all 3 parts in place: awareness, belief, and principles. Too often in life, we want to just deal with the principles, right? We want our employees to just change what they do. So we tell them what they should do, but we don't deal with their awareness or their beliefs, and then we wonder why they don't ever improve. We want to lose 50 pounds, and so we signed up with some program that tells us what to do, but we don't work to change the level of awareness or the beliefs that got us there in the first place, and then we wonder why we can't stick to the food program. Okay, this is really important to understand. Now, it would take me days to cover all 3 of these areas, okay? But for those who choose to work with me in the Empowerment Mentoring Program, we'll get into all of that later. But for today, we're just going to focus on the area of belief, right? Because belief is so important, and I find that it holds us back, in my opinion, more than anything else. Now, hopefully, since you signed up for this program, you've been thinking about what are the new beliefs that you want to create in your life or in the lives of your employees, of your families. So those of you who follow my blog, which is fromfoodtofaith.blogspot.com, you know that I've chosen a new belief to create, and I've been encouraging you to pick one belief so that we can work on them together at the same time over the next several weeks. And if you haven't been a part of my blog community before, just go to fromfoodtofaith.blogspot.com and join us. And of course, we'll be working intensely on these in the Empowerment Mentoring Program as well. So if you've already signed up for that, we'll obviously be getting into these throughout the process. But it's important that you know what beliefs you're trying to change, what new beliefs you want to create, so that this isn't just some nice listening exercise. I'm not interested in being a motivational speaker. I'm interested in helping you actually change, make an actual difference in your life. Now, it wasn't long ago that I was the heaviest I've ever been. Those of you who can see my slides, this picture was taken a little more than 2.5 years ago. I was 125 pounds over the weight I was used to, and physically I was in some pretty bad shape. My feet hurt with every step I took. My back always hurt, and you can see by this picture that my clothes look like I could have bought them from REI in the tent section. But I had been dieting at this point for 30 years, right? 30 years. Now take a look at this. This is a picture of me when I was 18, a couple of pictures of me. I had just joined my first weight loss program. I was 18 years old. I was right in the center of a healthy BMI range for me. And I was thin enough to be crowned Miss West Valley, which is the beauty queen for my city that year. So if I was already thin, why on earth would I join a weight loss program? Well, in order for me to explain that to you well, we got to go back a few more years in time in my life to when I was just a little girl. I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood near Salt Lake City, Utah. I had 3 brothers, no sisters, 2 dogs. I had a pretty normal life. Now, I did have some things that were really hard, the hardest of which was my parents' divorce when I was 8. Now, I'm not alone here. I mean, how many marriages end in divorce? That's not an unusual thing, but for me, that was really hard. And my parents handled their divorce as well as any human beings could possibly have handled that. Like, they never talked badly about each other to us kids. My dad moved only about a mile away, and we had no restrictions on when we could see him. And both of my parents still loved us, so, you know, what's the problem? The problem for me was that kids don't always see things the same way that adults do. They don't have that complete point of view. And that experience really rocked my world. The way I saw it, one day, my dad, who was one of the 2 people I loved most in the world, he lived with us. And then within minutes of telling us he was leaving, he didn't live there anymore. For me, that was kind of like thinking you're on solid ground and then having the carpet pulled out from under you. And you're never really sure if you can trust the ground you're standing on again, right? Does that make sense? Anyway, I developed a belief clear back then that I was somehow worthless. That if even my own dad could leave, I must be worthless. I must not be that important. I mean, isn't that sad? I know I'm not alone. You know, like I said, it's a pretty common thing, and it's a common thing for kids to interpret things that happen around them as being their fault. They think that if they could just do something different, that they could prevent bad things from happening. Then when they discover that no matter how hard they try, bad things keep happening, they decide that maybe they just aren't good enough. Well, that's where my own mind went. And just because my body grew up doesn't mean there was this magical day when I suddenly realized that the way I saw the world was inaccurate. In fact, because I saw myself as worthless, I saw everything that happened in my life as being proof of that belief. So if I burned dinner, I believed it meant that I was a horrible human being. I would just beat myself up over something as stupid as burning dinner, when in reality what it meant was that I really didn't ever have much practice cooking. And, you know, or I was always trying to do too many things at once and I burned that last thing. But the negative belief I developed about myself as a kid, those stayed in my mind. Now, those limiting beliefs put me in a really bad situation as a kid. They set me up to be a victim. I ended up being a victim of childhood sexual abuse for about 4 years by a school teacher. And I don't know if you realize this, but 1 in 5 kids are sexually abused before they turn 18. That's a horrendous number. And that means I'm not alone here on this call. There's a bunch of you in that same club. And in fact, abusers know how to pick out kids who are easy targets. And having these limiting beliefs really put a bullseye on my back. I mean, it looked like I was carrying around an advertisement for Target. And what do you think happened to a kid's limiting beliefs when it leads them into that kind of abuse? Well, obviously, those beliefs just get bigger and bigger, and you believe them more and more. All right. Enough of the sad talk. Let's talk about two ways that beliefs are created. The first way is through sudden emotional experiences like divorce, death, being abused, etc. One of my favorite examples of this is 9/11. I know that all of us were immediately affected by watching airplanes fly into buildings that were filled with people, right? One of my daughters at that time developed the belief that she wasn't safe anywhere, and anytime we were separated, she panicked. And that lasted for a couple of years. She had to work through that belief. We had to work through it until she could see the truth more clearly, that she wasn't in imminent danger all the time. Now, the second way that a belief is formed is through what we call spaced repetition of time. That's just a fancy way to say that something happens over and over and over again until we begin to believe it. So if you have a bully on the playground and they tell you you're ugly, well, the first time you might punch them or ignore them. The third day, you might want to go tell the teacher. But on the 50th day, you might begin to believe it. For some people, they were told by someone in some way that they were stupid or worthless over and over again until they began to believe it. For me, the bully was in my own head. No one ever told me I was worthless, ever. Not my parents, my brothers, my friends, kids at school. But I said it to myself over and over again for decades. Now listen, is it possible to believe a lie? Yeah, you bet it is, even if the lie is one that you're telling to yourself. In fact, my experience is that the lies you tell yourself are the hardest ones to get over because, for some reason, we all tend to believe our own thoughts. And we think we have all the evidence. So when you tell yourself those lies for decades on end, it's tough to believe anything else. So from as young as I can remember, I started using food like a drug, especially like really sugary, fatty foods that were pleasurable enough to make me forget, even if it was just for a few minutes, about how rotten I felt inside. So let's go forward. We're back to where I was 18, thin enough to be crowned Miss West Valley, and I'm joining my first weight loss program. So why did I do it? Because I was so miserable inside by this point. I felt like Pigpen, from Charlie Brown, with that dark cloud hanging over my head all the time, and I just couldn't shake it. I didn't know how to change the belief that I was worthless, even though logically I knew it wasn't true, but I couldn't shake the belief. And somewhere along the line, someone started telling me, you are so pretty. If you'd only lose 10 pounds, you'd be perfect. And I made the mistake of believing them. I started focusing on food and thinking that if I could just be skinny enough, then I'd be happy. Now, I wasn't overweight, so I had two directions I could have gone. I wanted to be anorexic or bulimic. I seriously did. But it turns out I couldn't stop myself from binging on food, so, the anorexia club would not have me as a member. And I hated to throw up, so they would never have accepted me in that club either, so I had nowhere to go but up. Now, this next slide shows the graph of ice cream sales in the summer, right? They just keep going up and up as the temperature goes and up. But you know what? It could very well be the exact graph of what my weight loss did over the next 30 years. It had nowhere to go but up and up and up. Now, I have to admit, I might have contributed to some of those ice cream sales over those years. But I literally, for the next 30 years, I dieted my way up 125 pounds. Now, you've probably heard the story of Thomas Edison, when he was asked by a reporter how he felt about failing to invent the light bulb after 10,000 failed attempts. And Edison's response was that of a true scientist. He said, I haven't failed 10,000 times. I've only found 10,000 ways that didn't work, right? Well, over those 30 years, I'm pretty sure that I found at least 10,000 ways that didn't work to lose weight or to be happy, but I did come up with my own light bulb moment. I began to realize that the problem wasn't what eating program I was following or what food I was eating or what exercise routine I followed. Now, pay attention to this because this is not a weight loss program. I'm only sharing you with this because that's one of the powerful ways that I've learned these lessons. But what you need to realize was that the problem was in my own mind. And it was in the beliefs of my own heart. I began to really see that all those years I had been hacking at the leaves of my problem instead of dealing with the root. And for me, once I realized that, everything began to change. Suddenly, I wanted to change the false belief I held about being worthless. I know logically that that belief was a lie, but I could not stop believing it. But now I was determined that that belief had to go. I saw that I would never really find happiness or lose the weight or, get the job that I wanted until that happened. So now we're finally at step one. Step one to the 10 steps of creating a new belief is that you must have a burning desire. A burning desire. Now, there's a big difference between a want and a wish and a burning desire. So Cinderella had a dream, right? A stalker has a burning desire. I've had a stalker before. Please don't go out and be a stalker. But you get the idea, right? A stalker knows what they want. They are locked on, and they are not going away till they get what they want. Well, that's what I want you to do with this wish, with this new belief that you're trying to create. Now, a burning desire is something that you want more than anything else. You can taste it, you can see it, you can feel it. It's not a matter of if you're going to get it, but when and how. So once I realized that the real root of my problem was spiritual, that it was internal, I desperately wanted to change that. In our bike analogy, we had to want to ride the bike before we were ever going to be brave enough to get on the bike. And long before we could ever learn the principles or the skills that you need to ride a bike, right? So I hope this is making sense to all of you. It's really important as we move through the steps. So step two, well, once I realized that my problem was in my heart and mind, I ran smack dab into step two, which is you have to act. It's not enough to get on the bike. You have to actually start pedaling. You're going to have to do something with it. So let me share you a few things that I did to start trying to move forward and changing my belief. All of these things involved getting mentors and coaches who could help me through it. I'd been trying to change on my own forever, but I needed somebody who had done it before, who could get into my mind and understand the things that I was dealing with. So the very first thing that I did was I started attending a 12-step group. Now, my church has a program called the Addiction Recovery Program, and that was a really powerful step for me because I got an amazing mentor who helped me start being able to take responsibility for my own life, my own thoughts and behaviors. And to be honest with you, I had to learn to stop trying to control everybody else. And it was the first time that I started really experiencing longer lasting periods of peace. I also came to realize that, so often we believe that we can recover. Now, 12-step groups, they like to use that word recovery or recover to describe not using their drug of choice anymore, right? So we think that when we're in recovery, we'll find peace. Now, I came to understand at that time, recovery does not bring peace. I came to understand that peace brings recovery. It's peace that brings recovery. When we finally learn how to be happy, putting down the substances or the behaviors we use to numb ourselves, they're just not needed anymore. So that was the first thing I did. Another thing I did was I read a lot of books, There are some great mentors and coaches out there that maybe you're not able to talk to them directly, one-on-one, but lots of people have captured the things that they're learning in the form of a book. So reading someone's book is like getting an indirect coach or mentor. One of my favorite books on this subject of creating new beliefs is a book by James Allen. It's called As a Man Thinketh. If you don't already have that book, get on Amazon and order it immediately. It's a really small book. It's like 57 pages. You can read it in an hour, but you will study it for a lifetime. He is an amazing mentor. The third thing I did was to go back to therapy. Now, that may not be for everyone, but for me, I was able to get a lot of help in thinking through my situation and my beliefs more clearly. So for me, my therapist was a powerful mentor and coach. Now we're at step 3. Step 3 is that you have to find your yes. And what does that mean, find your yes? It means that the world is programmed to tell you no. No, you can't do something, or that you should stay the same. And if you don't believe me, how many times have you heard someone say, well, that's just the way it is in this business. We'll never be able to change that. It's out of our control. Or, we love you just the way you are. You don't have to change for us. Or, once an addict, always an addict. Or, a leopard never changes its spots, right? Our society is programmed to think that people can't change. But if you're really going to do this, whatever it is that you really want, you're going to have to go out and find your own yes. I want to share with you a story about a woman I met yesterday. This is Rachel Green. She's a realtor here in the Salt Lake Valley. She was sharing her story with a group of women in business, and she was telling a story about when she first started her career as a realtor. She started in 2008 when the market was at its lowest. And the team she was with told her that she needed to go door to door asking people if they were ready to sell their homes. Now, not surprisingly, she said she was having very little success this way because at every door, people were saying that they weren't planning to sell, right? Several people indicated they were having tough financial times, and several had recently lost their jobs. So, of course, they weren't on the market to move. But Rachel wasn't about to give up. As she kept meeting all of these people who had no intention of selling their homes because of the bad economy, Rachel realized that it was precisely because of the bad economy that they may want to consider selling their home. So when someone would tell Rachel that they couldn't afford to move because they just lost their job, she started asking them if they were sure they were going to be able to make the payments on their home, or if maybe they should think about downsizing. And if so, she would be happy to help them sell their home before they started going into debt. I mean, that is genius, isn't it? When her entire team was busy calling, you know how when you sell your own home, all the realtors start calling you and driving you crazy? Yeah, so rather than signing up with a realtor, she found that she had a lot of angry people on the phone that wanted them to just stop calling. They were sick of the realtors calling them, and Rachel agreed. Like, she said that she would have been irritated too, but she also knew that being angry was not going to stop the realtors from calling. So she decided to be really direct with one of her callers by telling her, I know exactly how to get the realtors to stop calling you. When the woman asked how that could happen, Rachel told her that it was illegal for another realtor to call if she already had the house listed with an agent. So if they would list the house with Rachel, the other agents would have to stop calling her. Now, believe it or not, it worked. And she began getting contracts when everyone else was failing. Now, Rachel knows you have to create your own yes. I just love that example. So step 4, you must be willing to pay the price. We touched on this just a little bit when we were talking about the bike, but so often in life, we're not successful, not because we don't have the ability to do something, but because we aren't willing to pay the price. Far too often we negotiate with whatever it is that we want. And last summer, Ken and I took our youngest child to her senior trip, and we went to Italy. If you've ever shopped in another country, you may have learned a little bit about negotiating, right? Bargaining, I don't know what you want to call it, but I hate it. I hate negotiating. I just want to know the price of something, pay it, and be done. I want to walk out of the store with what I want, but my husband loves it. It's like a sport for him. So when we go out of the country, we just tell Ken what we want. He goes to work trying to see how low he can get it for, and we walk away and get ice cream because we're so embarrassed by how bad he's like dickering. Now, there's only one problem with that, and that is Ken is an extremely good negotiator. And how do you know how to tell who the best negotiator is in any situation? It's the one who's willing to walk away. And last summer, I had my eye on a backpack. a specific one that I've been watching through the trip. And on the last day, I finally told Ken, okay, start working to get it for me. But every time he would walk away in the process of negotiating the price, and I was getting hacked. I wanted the backpack. I didn't really care if we had to pay a few more dollars to get it. That's why I'm not a good negotiator. Once I decide that I want something, I want it. Now, too often with our dreams, we start negotiating. And when we do finally walk away, oftentimes we walk away without our dream. Now, Ken would want me to add here that he got me my backpack and he got it for an amazing price, but that's beside the point, right? So let's just say that you are willing to pay the price, but the paths you've tried to create this new belief have failed. Well, what do you do now? Well, now you're going to have to apply step number 5. You are going to have to be creative. On step 2, I told you that a week ago we had the opportunity to go see the Broadway musical Hamilton. Now, you can believe me when I say that nothing was going to get in the way of us attending the show that day. Nothing. So Hamilton came to Salt Lake City, excited to go. What do you think would have happened if we got in our car that night? And as we turned out of the neighborhood, we saw that the major intersection we usually drive through to get there had a major car accident. Would we just throw up our hands in the air and say, oh, shoot, we'll never get there now. I guess we'll just turn around and go back home? Like, of course not. We would whip our car around, take a different path to get there. Well, what if I get to the freeway and the traffic is at a standstill? Then would I turn around and go home? No way. We would get off the freeway. I mean, I'd be driving on the shoulder if I had to, get off the next exit, and I'd be taking side streets. Well, this is Utah, so what if I run into construction on the side streets? Well, then we would be four-wheeling it over the curbs to get to the show, but I would not stop until I am sitting in my seat at Hamilton, right, in the theater. When plan A fails, go to plan B. Get creative, but never, never give up. Oh, there's my slides I didn't show you. All right. Now, step 6 is by far the hardest step for me. Step 6 says that you must challenge your old belief. Now, this is absolutely key, and I want you to understand how to do this because I misunderstood this for many, many years. Let's take a look at my old belief of feeling worthless, right? I was trying to create the belief that I was valuable, that I had worth, that I wasn't worthless. So let's say I'm carrying in the groceries and I drop 2 dozen eggs. And maybe a thought like, I'm so stupid comes into my mind. Like, I'm not alone here, right? That does go through my mind. Well, before learning how to challenge my beliefs, I would recognize that thought and just try to think of something else, right? I'm trying to distract myself. So I would try to replace that thought with like, I'm not stupid, I'm smart. But I couldn't get myself to believe it. One part of my brain would say, I'm stupid. And the other part would say, no, you're smart. And the negative part of my brain would just come back with saying like, see, I told you were stupid. If you actually think you're smart, you're dumber than I thought you were. When I take the time to challenge that belief, something cool happens. Let's say I have the thought, I'm stupid. Now I'm going to take the time to examine it. Like, am I actually stupid? Well, I did graduate with a degree and I got good grades. I've done a lot of hard things that take brains, so I'm probably not stupid. Okay. If I'm not stupid, well, what's going on here? As I examine or challenge that belief, I could learn that maybe what I was not careful enough at that moment, right? I'm trying to do too many things at once. Maybe the reality of the situation is that I need to work on being more patient and take the groceries in more loads. Well, when I do that, now I can see that the old limiting belief isn't even true. I don't have to talk myself into it not being true. I just know that it's not true. So I don't need to convince myself that I'm smart. I just needed to see the old belief for what it was, a knee-jerk reaction that wasn't helpful, nor was it accurate. Now let's take a minute and talk about the beliefs that we hold on to that tell us that what we want is impossible for us. A lot of us have those beliefs. Oftentimes the things we want to overcome or achieve seem absolutely impossible. Maybe we want to significantly reduce turnover in our country or our company. Maybe we want to lose 100 pounds. Maybe we want to resurrect a friendship that's on life support. Whatever it is we're facing, It's hard to do what we need to do if we believe it's impossible, but what really is impossible? Take a look at this picture of Roger Bannister. Roger Bannister was the first person to ever run a 4-minute mile. And he did it in 1954, okay? In the history of the world, no one had ever run a 4-minute mile. People at the time believed your heart would just stop and you'd drop dead. And yet he did it. And you know what's interesting is that now the 4-minute mile is the standard for male professional middle distance runners. The standard. Think about that. So before that, there were the Wright brothers, right, with the first airplane in 1903. Ever since the first caveman saw the first bird fly, man has wished they could fly. But everyone was convinced it just couldn't happen. Now we all have credit cards in our wallets just to rack up our sky miles so that we can play in Disneyland or Italy or wherever we happen to want to go. And we can be anywhere in the world literally in a matter of hours. How about Marty Cooper? He was the owner of Motorola who invented the first cell phone. Remember those old brick phones? Can you imagine going back in time just 100 years ago, 100 years ago from now, and walk up to anybody out on the dirt streets and pull out your smartphone and tell them that that little piece of metal, plastic, and glass lets you talk to anyone in the entire world. And you can do it in just a few seconds, and all you need is a few numbers to punch onto the front, and you're talking to anybody, right? It doesn't even cost you anything except whatever you pay for your monthly plan. I mean, that would have blown their minds. And yet, your mind might be telling you that you want things that are impossible, that it's impossible to improve your business or to improve your health or to improve your relationships. I'm not buying it, and neither should you. So let's move on to step 7, which is you must take the first step without knowing the others. Now, maybe some of you are perfectionists like me and you want to know every step of what you're doing before you even begin. Well, you're just not going to get very far that way. This is a picture of my little grandbaby, Aria. She is 8 weeks old. And if you're joining me, you can see that she's like the most gorgeous baby on earth, but even though I'm not biased at all. And right now, she's just learned how to smile. She's learning how to roll over. And in about 10 months from now, what is she going to learn how to do? She's going to be walking, right? Now, I'm really glad that I have 10 months to prepare for that because I need to have plenty of time to download some videos from YouTube that she can watch to learn how to walk, right? Of course not. How is Aria going to learn how to walk? Well, she's going to try doing it. And when she does, she is going to fall. Guaranteed. She will fall. And not just once. She's going to fall so many times that she's going to lose track of how many times she's fallen. We're not even going to count because it's expected. We know she's going to fall, and that's actually good. You see, falling can look like failing sometimes, can't it? And yet every time she tries to walk, she's going to learn something new. She'll understand a little more about balance. She'll develop hand-eye coordination, muscle dexterity, and eventually she's going to put all that together enough that she'll be able to take a few steps, and then a few more, and a few more, and eventually, I mean, she could be another Roger Bannister running a 4-minute mile, and no one would ever think about the fact that at one point she had to learn how to walk, right? But right now, we're not worried about that. When she's ready, she'll just focus on her first step, and then we'll face the second step when we get there. It's how we do everything. So let's look at step 8. Step 8 is to remember the law of sacrifice. So what is sacrifice? I love words. Those of you who know me know I love words and I love to research what they mean. And Merriam-Webster's dictionary says that a sacrifice is the destruction or surrender of something for the sake of something else. But I think there's something really important to understand here. Let me ask you something. When have you really sacrificed something? If you're a parent, I know you've sacrificed for your kids, right? Maybe your sacrifice was as big as sacrificing your career, or maybe it was something as small as always making your sandwich with the heel of the bread because nobody else would eat it, right? Maybe you've made sacrifices at work to get promotions or to lead others effectively or be financially successful. Maybe you sacrificed to go back to school. I have kids who are turning away good paying jobs right now in order to go to school. But my question for you is, why are they doing that? Well, the belief is that they're giving away a few years of salary now so that when they're done making the sacrifice, which, you know, that's going to include years of study as well as years of repaying student loans, etc. But at the end of that, they're hoping that they're going to make more money or get the job that they want most. In other words, the payoff is going to be greater than the sacrifice, right? When you sacrifice at work, you believe the payoff will be better than the sacrifice. You believe that coming in a little early or leaving a little late or changing the way you do things is going to pay off. If you didn't, why would you bother? You wouldn't. When I sacrifice for my kids, it's because I believe the payoff is worth it, right? The payment for me of being around to raise my kids was worth putting my career on hold for. And happy kids who weren't moping during lunch was worth eating a sandwich made of all crust, okay? So big or small, we don't make sacrifices unless we believe the payoff is worth it. So when we're talking about creating a new belief, the act of sacrificing is going to be you figuring out the value of the thoughts, beliefs, and actions in your life and becoming aware of which ones are most important to you and then acting on that new awareness. So if I have conflicting beliefs that I can ride the bike and that I can't ride the bike, I'm going to have to decide which one of those has greater value and then act accordingly. When I have conflicting beliefs that I'm worthless or that I have value, I have to decide which of those beliefs has more worth to me and then sacrifice the other one. I have to be willing to give up the old thoughts and beliefs, the old actions. Sometimes we even have to give up friends or habits. We have to be willing to analyze the value of the things in our lives and put them in proper place. Okay, now we've covered a lot of material so far. We have just 2 more steps to go. But let me say while we're pausing here, these steps are not necessarily things that you have to do in order, except number 1, right? I'd say if you don't have a burning desire for the new belief you're trying to create, it's going to break down quickly. But all of the other steps can be applied all along the way. So don't think of these as linear steps like when I finish number 1, then I'll move to number 2. No, think of them as part of a moving machine that you're just going to keep tweaking and working on as you go. All right, step 9. See yourself in possession of what you want. This can be challenging, especially when you don't believe that you can have it yet. For decades, literally decades, I tried to picture myself with a healthy body, right? They'd always say, envision what you want. Well, honestly, I just couldn't do it. I had this block that wouldn't let me see myself as anything other than fat. It was like being the Kool-Aid guy trying to imagine myself as Jessica Rabbit. It just wasn't going to happen. But a couple of years ago, I was sitting at a John Maxwell training event in Florida, and Paul Martinelli asked a great question. He said, if you could watch a DVD of your life 3 years from now, just a 3-year highlight of the next 3 years, what would you want to see on that video? Would it be the same things you've been doing forever? Or will you have done something with those 3 years? What will your everyday be like then? Now, I've journaled about that for hours that week. I actually wrote 7 detailed journal entries as if it was 3 years into the future, and I spelled out in detail what I wanted my life to be like. I wrote it as if it already happened. So, for example, I wrote, today was a great day. I enjoy Mondays because I get to go to the gym, and I ran for a couple of miles today, and I got a great stretch in before going home. And then I wrote about like the amount of work, the type of work I did that day, how many coaching clients I had, how many trainings, talked about going to babysit my granddaughter so that, my daughter could go exercise. I really spelled out all the details, and I did that for all 7 days of the week because, of course, I don't want every day of my week to look the same. So I wanted to spell out what my entire life would look like, not just one day. By the time I was done, I could actually see myself living the life I wanted with the beliefs and attitudes that I wanted, not to mention the health and happiness that I wanted. So if I struggle to see myself with the new beliefs I want, I just go back to where do I want to be in 3 years? Or sometimes I'll do 10 or 20 years, and then I know what I'm shooting for. So can you see yourself having a better relationship with people at work? Can you see yourself making more money with less stress? Can you see yourself healthy, happy, connected with the people around you? For a lot of you, this is going to take some work, some imagination. But that's what our imagination is for, creating worlds that don't yet exist. It allows us to create them. No other species on the planet can do this, right? You're never going to be driving through Wisconsin and see some cow jump on the fence and shout to the world, hey, we don't have to be cows anymore. We can be giraffes or horses, or we could build cities. Yeah, that's just not going to happen. Only humans have the ability to create our lives each and every day. And we do have that power. The power to create our lives, and it begins in our own imaginations. All right, step 10 is to celebrate the victories along the way. Now, this sounds so easy that you're going to be tempted to blow this off, but this is actually just as crucial as the other steps. Somehow we think that we're going to celebrate, when our profit and loss statement shows a certain increase, or when we see our ideal weight on the scale. But those victories are made of lots of small victories along the way. And if we don't recognize those victories, we're missing out on the joy of the journey. Before you can show an increase in profit and loss, you're going to have to have improved communication between management and direct reports. Well, any improvement there is a victory, right? Before you can lose 100 pounds, you have to practice turning to healthy ways of coping with stress. Well, every time you do that is a victory. Each large victory can literally be made of hundreds, if not thousands, of smaller victories. And those victories are critical to the big victory ever becoming possible. And George Washington, right, he didn't win the war. He won hundreds of battles. Incidentally, he also lost a lot of battles. That's part of the game. You're not going to do this without some serious challenges and some pushback. But when you win more battles than you lose, you move forward, and eventually the enemy has to fall. So celebrate each and every victory along the way. I have a place in my daily planner for victories. Each day I make a small decision, or each time I make a small decision that brings me closer to one of my goals, I write it down on that day. And then at the end of the day, I review them and see if there's more that I can add to the list. And it is amazing how good it feels to look through the day and just realize that along with the struggles, I also had victories. I can pat myself on the back for those and look forward to making another list of victories tomorrow. When you count what's going right, you build a positive momentum, and that can keep you going in the right direction. It can help you find a way to make more victories. So I want to tell you a little story here about my son Carson. This is, those of you who can see the slide, this is Carson when he was 4. And we're going to open up the queue for questions in a minute. When my son was 6, he was trying to learn how to ride his bike. Now for our older girls, it took us about a weekend to teach them. But for some reason, Carson was more scared than they were. Every time he would fall, he would quickly get off his bike, head into the house, convinced he would never be able to ride his bike. And Ken and I tried so hard to get him to trust us and that he could do it, but after several weeks of trying, we were starting to get worried. Not about whether he could do it, but about whether or not he would give up before he learned how. So it was about this time that we took our trailer into the mountains to go camping. So we packed all the kids into the truck and we threw all the bikes in and off we went. Now I'll never forget the first morning camping. I was putting on all of Carson's gear, right? Because he was so scared. He had a helmet, elbow pads, knee pads, shin guards. I mean, he was so scared. He looked like the Michelin Man, but he was padded and ready to try again. And the reason why we'll never forget that moment is because my sweet little boy looked up into my face and said, "Mom, today's the day. The winds of change are about to blow." I swear to you on my life, that is exactly what he said. And I stifled a laugh, and I prayed he would not be disappointed, and I followed him out the door with my video camera. So Ken took him to the top of the hill, and sure enough, as soon as Ken let go, he was actually riding his bike all by himself. We were screaming and hollering so loud. We were so excited, and he was so happy and proud of himself. He just kept riding and riding and riding until he was exhausted. We couldn't have been happier if we won the lottery. And you know why we were that happy? It wasn't because he could ride his bike. It was because he now had more belief in himself than he'd had for months. He knew he could do hard things. He had proven it to himself. That is what made us, as his parents, happy. As a side note, he went on to have a love affair with unicycles, of all things. In fact, at the University of Utah, he was known as the unicycle guy because he would spend, a whole year riding his unicycle to class. So because once he became aware that he could do hard things, there was a whole new world of possibilities that opened up to him. And that's what will happen for you too. Now, as for me, after working through all these steps faithfully over time, my belief that I was worthless really started to change. I started to actually know that I wasn't worthless. In fact, what I learned was that I was priceless. I can't tell you what that discovery, what that change in belief has done for me. And the thing is, I want you to know that you are priceless, that you are loved and lovable, and that you were created to be happy. It's why I do what I do. It is why I do what I do. Now, I want to open up the queue for the Q&A portion of our seminar today. Let's see if I can do it right without messing this up. Dun, dun, dun. Give me just a second. Why can't I see? Hold on. Here we go. Okay. All right, so if you want to get in the queue, well, let's see. It should tell you, if you're on the phone, you're going to dial *6. If you are on your computer, once you've chosen either the phone or the video to be able to join audio, it will give you the option to ask a question, and then you can just click that button and it will automatically put you in the queue. So I'm going to encourage you, if you have a question, a thought, something you want to share, just go ahead and climb in the queue. And while you're doing that, I told you at the beginning of the program that this is just one part of a 6-month program that I offer called Empowerment Mentoring. It's an empowerment mentoring program, and there's really only a couple ways that I work with people. Every once in a while I do a book study. I do a book study maybe twice a year. And I have a one-on-one mentorship program, and honestly, financially, it's just not in reach for a lot of people. But I really do like to mentor people, and so I'm just going to give you a quick overview of what that program looks like and what's involved in the program. And I think you'll be able to see as you begin to put these pieces in your life together, you're going to be able to see how you can navigate a new way in your life. Okay, I made a promise that you'd be able to leave the seminar with the resources that I shared with you today, that the understanding of this you'll be able to apply in your life and begin to improve at least one area in your life. And I hope that you have found that to be true so far today. Now, one of the things that you need to know is, where are you starting from? We all have to know where we are. You're going to have to be able to take self-inventory. And you got to take an inventory of where you are. So you need an understanding of where it is you want to go as well. And how are you going to get there? Who's going to help you on that journey? And what's going to be necessary for you to make the changes within you? I mean, aren't you a little bit more aware right now that the most important thing you can do is work on not really the things outside of you, but on the things inside of you, right? I mean, as soon as I got this, I really quickly realized that if I wanted to get anywhere, I had to start working on Becky, right? The inside of Becky. So I offer this program called Empowerment Mentoring. For those of you joining via computer, let's see, you should be able to see a summary sheet, there we go, of the lessons that we're going to cover in this program. I'll send it out in an email after we're done here today, okay? I'll send everybody an email with it. So let me just cover the very first thing I do. It's a complete system. This is going to be a 6-month program. Why 6 months? Because real change takes time. And we're going to help you go through the process of real, lasting change. So the very first thing we do is we start with the comfort zone. All growth takes place outside of the comfort zone. We're going to start by exploring where you are in your current comfort zone. Like, what's the first step outside of the comfort zone? I'm going to guide you through a process and encourage you and share with you some tools and resources to help you overcome the fear and doubt of taking that first step. Because I have found, truly, in my life and in the lives of other people, if you'll just take the first step, sometimes the first step is all the momentum that you need to take the next. Then we're going to go on to purpose, vision, and goals. And I explain how purpose is like the sun. Our purpose is there for a season in your life. Listen, we do things in our lives for a reason, a season, and a lifetime. And you're going to have a purpose that might be with you for 10 or 15 years. And everything revolves around your purpose. And the purpose of purpose is, it's why we do what we do. And then there's vision. Vision becomes our highest conscious awareness of what it is that we want to create. Where do you see yourself? How will you bring forward your purpose in your life? And then from vision, then we're going to establish goals once you have all that in place. So we're going to go from comfort zone right to purpose, vision, goals. And then we're going to do a lesson that I absolutely love. It's a lesson called You Are Perfect. This lesson is all about helping you see that you already have everything you need to be successful. I say we're born perfect and programmed for failure, right? How many of you know that there's some programming you want to change? You've got some imperfect programming, and then after that we're going to go to perception. Making a shift to perception isn't quite as easy as it sounds, but finding the willingness to change the way you look at things, that's really important. And then you can see that we go on to the lesson on drama. I teach that there are 4 pillars of drama, and whenever there's drama in our life, there are 4 things that support that. And then the most powerful lesson is going to be the one on forgiveness. One of the biggest blocks for people moving into their future is oftentimes their past, something that they haven't let go of, or sometimes they're just trying to drag their past into their future. There's some stuff you need to let go of if you're going to make your journey. And most people have never really been taught the process of forgiveness. There's a process. And for most people, when we think of forgiveness, we think of other people and not ourselves. Then we're going to look at forgiveness. So we'll take you through attitude and through the terror barrier, through breaking through those limiting beliefs. I love terror barrier. And then gratitude, that's a good one. Most people don't understand what gratitude even is. If I give you $100, you would say thank you because you received it, right? That's being thankful. But gratitude is different. Gratitude is thanksgiving in advance. Gratitude is knowing that even though what you want hasn't manifested yet, you trust that it's coming. So you're grateful as if, right? That's a big difference. And you can see the other lessons there on the summary sheet. Now, let me flip it over here. Like I said, this is a 6-month program. We're going to have contact with each other every week. 1 week will be a lesson, and you'll get some powerful assignments to be working on to apply that lesson into your life. And then the next week, we'll have a live Q&A call where I'll help coach you through your specific challenges in putting it into practice. And we'll share what we're all going through, and you'll get the support you need, okay? All the calls will be recorded. You'll be able to listen to them over and over. If you have to miss a call because of a conflict, don't sweat it. You can access them anytime. You can listen to them going to and from work or whatever works best for you. The calls are all going to be at this same time every week, Thursdays at 5 o'clock. Like I said, they're going to be recorded. You can access them anytime, but that's when I'll be on live. And I'll get you the exact schedule, right, when you sign up. So this program is going to start next week. It's going to start on May 3rd. So you want to sign up quickly so that you don't miss the first week. So again, I'll get you the schedule. And if you miss one of the calls, that's okay. It's going to be recorded. Now, sometimes we're going to do what I call a hot seat call, where I might spend a little bit more time with somebody if I think that their question or their need is going to serve the community as a whole, okay? And then you'll be able to email me questions throughout the week as well. So if you're having an issue on how to apply the principle to your life, you just send me an email and we'll make sure that we have regular contact with you. Now, the enrollment price for this program normally is $997 for the program. And you get everything we talked about, 6 months of every week. And now what I like to do is I like to make it really easy for you. I like to offer a killer deal, right? So I have a recorded 10-disc set called 10 Secrets to Success. And it includes 10 lessons on understanding, honesty and vision, persistent in focus, courage, intuition, leadership, faith, and giving. Now, if you go to my website today, you can buy it for $129, but I'm going to include a digital downloadable version of that into this package when you enroll today. So if you'll go to the summary sheet, you see here on this summary sheet where it says $997, And the first 9 is crossed out, and the number 4 is put there. So you're going to get both the 6-month program and the Secrets to Success program for $497. I can do that today for 2 reasons, because first of all, I don't have to pay for marketing because you're all here. That doesn't take me any more time. And secondly, I'm willing to do it because you have already made an investment of time to be on this free seminar. I found that when people don't make an investment in themselves, they don't do what it takes to make permanent change. And since you have been willing to invest your time today, I'm willing to invest in you. Now, this deal is for the next 4 days, okay, through this coming Monday. So now look, if you're not able to buy it by Monday night, that's okay. You can go anytime on my website, and I will honor the $997 price. So if you don't buy it before the end of Monday, you can still start with me on May 3rd. But this offer, including the free 10 CD set, is only good for the next 4 days until the end of Monday at $497. If you want to buy it anytime after that before May 3rd, it's always available on my website. This is a continuity program. You can join it at any time. But if you want to join before the May date, you can, and I will always honor the $997 price after Monday. So today, I'll stick around after the call. If you've got more questions about the program, I'm happy to answer them. When you enroll by Monday night, you'll also get the digital recording of the Secrets to Success, okay? And so if you've got questions, I'll stick around to answer them. Okay, so let's see who we have on the queue. Let's see if I can do it well, okay? Kathy. Hold on. Dun, dun. I got to figure out how to get you to be able to talk. Okay, Kathy, can you hear me? Wait a minute. I think I just muted you. Try again. There we go. Kathy, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, I can hear you just fine. Sorry. This is my first time using the free conference call instead of Zoom, and I'm just totally getting used to how it all works. So how can I help you, Cassie? What's your question today?
I'm wondering how you discovered what your limiting belief was. Like, how did you discover that your limiting belief was that you are worthless?
You know what? The first time that dawned on me was in a therapist's office years ago. And she started asking me, questions, helping me to really discover what sorts of situations I was finding myself in that were triggering me to, for me, the problem was eating and using food to really disconnect from my life. And I started to recognize that it would happen at times where I felt either worthless or powerless. Those were kind of my 2 watchwords. So if I felt that someone was taking away my choices, that would kind of send me into a lot of anxiety and frustration. Or if I felt worthless, if I felt maybe somebody I loved was choosing to go do something else instead of spending time with me, or I felt like I hate to admit this out loud on a recording, but I used to be worried that maybe my kids would be better off without me, right? That they would have a better mom, or they would, I would wallow in this self-pity. And as she helped me start discovering, every time I wanted to zone out, and for me that meant turning to food, it was because something had triggered me that made me feel either stupid or worthless or like I had no control in my life. So that's where it really started. But
okay.
It took me years from there to realize what to do with that. I mean, I kind of thought, well, if you understand what's triggering you, then it'll stop. But I learned that's not true. Not true for me at all. I had to actually learn how to dissect that belief every time it came up. So now, I still will have feelings like that sometimes, and I have to stop and think through it and say, okay, am I really worthless just because X, Y, or Z is happening? What's really going on? And work through that. And now I can do that pretty quickly. In the past, it might take me 3 days to dissect one situation and figure out what went wrong. Does that make sense?
It does, yes. Thank you.
So can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Okay. So what's the process that you have gone through to figure out what your limiting belief is that you want to change?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Yeah. What's your process? How, have you been thinking about, since you registered for this seminar, have you been thinking about a new belief you want to create or one that you want to get rid of? And if so, how did you come up with it?
Nothing specific, actually. I just kind of have been working on it in the back of my mind, not really focusing on it, just because I've got a lot of things on my plate. I'm trying to play catch up from being gone for a week. But typically, I have aha moments where I discover things about me through journaling. I find for me just writing, and whatever pops into my head, I write down, and then every now and then I come across a little nugget of, oh, wow, is that really what I think? Is that really what's kind of triggering? Or I find that that's a really powerful tool for me.
I agree. That's journaling is one of those things that is a powerful tool because I find you discover as you go.
Yeah.
Have you identified a new belief that you want to create?
I'm trying to formulate that. I don't. I don't actually have it into words, but it kind of goes like I'm confident when I talk to people, and I'm confident in expressing myself and my thoughts, and opinions have merit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. In fact, I mean, you could kind of just summarize that by just saying I'm confident, right?
Right.
And then the opinion having merit is like almost a subset of that.
Right. Yeah, I could sum that up in I am confident. Yeah.
So when do you find that the opposite of that tends to pop up into your head, right? That not being confident and not having opinions that are valued. When do those situations seem to pop up?
It just kind of like when I want to say something, but I'm like, maybe I shouldn't say something. And I really think that goes back to when I was a little kid. That was just kind of the way we were raised. We don't, you don't question authority. You don't, I don't know. It's just kind of the way that we were raised that we didn't ever talk back to our parents. Not that I think that kids should talk back to their parents, but like we weren't encouraged to express our opinions. We weren't encouraged to share what we were thinking, even in a constructive way. It was, this is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to do what I say, and that's that. So
when I want your opinion, I'll give it to you?
Yes.
So that's a belief that you developed really young, right?
Yes.
So what situations would you like to be able to say what you're thinking without really questioning that?
Oh boy, all sorts of, like every situation. Like in my marriage, with my kids, I just had a daughter who had her first baby, and I'm trying to not step on toes, but I don't want to. I want to give advice, but I don't want to, say, hey, this is the right way, or this is, so I don't want to give unsolicited advice, but, trying to find that balance. In my career, I want to be confident when I talk to people.
What's the worst thing that could happen if you were to give advice to your kids and then find out that they didn't really appreciate that advice? What's the worst thing that could happen?
The very, very worst is they could never talk to me again and keep my grandkids from me.
Do you think that's realistic?
No, it's not realistic.
So what's the worst that really could happen, do you think?
Some hurt feelings, and then maybe an argument and a cry session, and then we hug and make up, and we're fine.
Okay, so even the end of that story, things would be okay, right?
Right.
So what would happen if you were to set a goal in the next week to take one situation when you notice that moment when you're hesitant to say what you really think? What if you were to take that moment and actually just say what you think and see what happens?
I will do that. I can do that.
What's the best that could happen?
Wow.
Sometimes we always think about what's the worst thing that could happen. If you're like me, it's like worst case scenario girl, right?
Right. I'm weighing the risk. I'm like, what's the risk in that, without thinking about, hey, what could the reward be?
What would the reward be if you gave your kids some advice and they actually took it?
Well, actually, my daughter has been taking my advice. She's actually been asking for a lot of advice, and she's been taking it really well. But yeah, this past week I have been giving her a lot of advice, but it has been solicited. She's been asking for most of the advice, but she's been very appreciative because she's never had a kid before. She's never had a baby, and
right.
What do I do with this? How do I do that? And
Right. How might this apply to your new business? So those of you listening in, Cassandra is a real estate agent, and she's a fairly new real estate agent. And I would imagine that when you talk about speaking confidently, does that fear ever pop up when you're speaking with new clients, or how would that appear in your new business?
Yes, it does. Probably. It's because I have a client now that I don't really know her that well, so I'm trying to test the waters of, do I say something and then that alienates her? Because it's just a matter of opinion. She's asking me questions about her house. I'm helping her sell, But she says, would you take that out, or would you leave it there, kind of a thing. Or what else do you see? Sorry. There's just a lot of, I just have a lot of hesitancy there, where I can see where I don't need to be, because inside I know that I'm qualified, and I know that I have good answers, but it's just that confidence. I just need to know that I don't know if that makes sense.
I think it does, especially when you think about what you said about if your opinions have merit, right? So take something as simple as this woman asking if you would take something out of the house or not. Do you have experience in that field that she doesn't have?
Yes.
Yes. So automatically, your opinions have some merit, right? Which is why
Right.
she's asking you. She's not calling me to see if she should take something out of her house because she knows I have no clue, right? That my house is cluttered from end to end. But she knows that you have some experience there, so that automatically gives you some merit. Are there ways that you can express your opinions in any of these situations? Well, let me ask it this way. How would you express your opinion in this situation in a way that can share your opinion that has merit and still leave them available to either accept or reject it without it harming the relationship?
Well, if I qualify it by, well, in my opinion, or what I've seen in other cases, or, so if I qualify what I say with,
Yeah.
or it's been my experience, blah, blah, blah.
Right, right. When we come from a place of humility, when we realize that we don't have all the answers, then I think when we present what our opinions are or the things that we see, we don't really have to be worried about that because we're leaving room for them to make a choice. We're just giving them one more piece of feedback to consider. Right?
Right.
I mean, the same can be true with your daughter. If you say, this is the only way to raise this kid, I imagine she's not going to invite you over very often. But, what are some ways that you can couch the same kind of thing to your adult children?
I mean, I could do the same thing. I could say, in my opinion, or it's been my observation, or, this way has worked for me.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But the truth is, your opinions have a lot of merit. You've raised 3 kids.
Uh-huh.
Right? So I think part of you examining your old beliefs, right? Taking that step 6 and challenging your old beliefs is when you get that moment where you suddenly feel like, should I say this or should I not say it? Right? Is my opinion, does it have merit or not? Just take a second and ask yourself, well, does my opinion have merit? Do I have something that may be of value? Do I have some experience I can share? Is there a way I can do that in a way that gives them all the freedom and ability to take it or leave it, and it's not going to harm our relationship? And then I think you'll see really quickly that it's pretty painless to share that opinion, right?
Right.
So
Right.
part of your thing I would say is challenging those old beliefs that, you're not a 4-year-old kid anymore and you're not talking back to anyone. You're simply sharing a thought you have.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It does. It does. But sometimes I feel that trigger, like all of a sudden I feel like I'm that 4-year-old girl again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There's a great woman named Janine Roth writes some interesting books, and she calls that little part of ourself our ghost child, our ghost children, right? These little parts of us that are created when we're kids that we still hang on to those fears, those limiting beliefs. For me, I call it my mini-me, right? My little 8-year-old mini-me that was created who somehow is afraid of being left. Right? I'm always afraid of doing something or saying something that people will abandon me. Right? And so we have to constantly take a minute when you feel mini-me or that ghost child speaking up to actually examine that. Okay, well, that must be really frustrating to feel that way. And as a child, it's hard to feel like your opinions don't matter. It's hard to feel like nobody wants to hear what you have to say. And that can be painful. And even worse is we try to protect ourselves from the results that happened when we were children. So when you were a kid and you were given that belief, don't talk back, don't give me your opinion unless I ask for it. Did you feel some rejection or some pain there?
Yeah, I would say so. I'm not sure if I can. I'd have to work on figuring out what emotions, but shame, not being accepted,
Not being enough.
yeah, not being enough. Yeah.
So, you know, what's really going on is you've got this protector part of your brain that says, oh, don't say that. If you say that, you're going to be rejected. If you say that, they're going to think you're not enough. If you say that, there's going to be distance between you and them, right?
Right.
And so we have those parts of us, the part that's afraid and the part that wants to protect us from that ever happening again. And that's when we have to take that little kid. In my mind, I'll just put her right on my lap and say, you know what, let's have a chat. When you were 8, that might have felt really true, but you know what, you're not 8 anymore. And this is not a scary situation, and you do have good opinions, and you do have something you can help them with. So watch, we can do this differently. We can do it like this, and it's going to be fine. And every time we do that, we kind of heal that little kid inside of us a little bit more, and we develop trust with ourselves that, oh yeah, I can do this. Oh yeah, I am enough. Okay, it's okay.
Yes. Wow. Phew. Good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot to learn. Well, thank you so much for sharing your question, Kath.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
Anything else I can help you with?
Probably not at this time.
Okay, great.
I mean, sure. I mean, but you don't need to go on for 2 years, so.
Okay,
You're
good.
on phone call.
Thanks. Okay, so before we end here, we've just got a couple of minutes left. I'm going to share with you. Actually, it's 6:30 now, but let me share with you quickly the belief that I'm working on changing right now, because I think we all have a huge list of them we can work on. And if any of you want to share one that you're going to work on, you're welcome to get back in the queue. If those of you who have to go, because it is 6:30 and you drop off, I'm not going to be offended. I totally get that. But on my blog over the next, I don't know, several weeks, I'm just sharing my process of changing a new belief with you. And the new belief I've chosen is that I choose to stay connected with myself, with God, and with others. And the reason I chose that as my belief that I'm going to work on is because when I get high levels of stress, I tend to want to disconnect from that. And I can disconnect with that. For me, the food is still the challenge when that happens. And I do that to disconnect, to have to kind of get through it without thinking, right? If I've got a deadline for work and I'm stressed out about it, it's easier to go through that with a bowl of licorice at my side, right? And I want to choose to stay connected in my life. And in order to do that, the first person I have to be connected with is myself and get really clear on what am I struggling with? What are my challenges right now? And then I have to make sure that I'm connecting with God, because for me, that is a source, that is the source of peace for me and the source of truth, right? When I want to counteract those lies that I'm believing, I need to turn to that source of truth to see clearly. And then connecting with others, because I don't know if you're like me, but when I turn to compulsive behaviors or to behaviors that I don't like, I'm usually isolating from other people. I want to be alone. I want to do it in private. I just want to decompress from my life. And we all know that the opposite of addiction, well, maybe you don't know this, but the opposite of addiction is not giving up the thing you're addicted to. The opposite of addiction is connection, right? When people are addicted, they are disconnecting from the world. And we want to make sure that we're connected. It's why we're here. Well, with that, I want to thank you guys for joining me today. It really means a lot, and I've had a great time sharing these things with you. I hope it's helpful. I will make sure that to get this video put onto a private YouTube page today, and I will send you an email probably later tonight that will have a link to this recording that you can watch over and over as you wish. And I'll also give you some links to the forms to fill out for the Empowerment Mentoring Program. And if you didn't hear me mention this, or actually I didn't mention it on here before, that is a program also that businesses will offer as kind of a benefit to all of their employees. And if you are a business owner and that's something you're interested in, contact me because it's an incredibly steeply discounted rate. And I go by how many employees you have. So if that's something you're interested in, let me know. But again, the 6-month program is available through Monday night at the $497 price, and after that, it's always available at the $997. And so if you have any questions, just contact me. I think you all know how to do that. And I hope that this has been a powerful tool to help empower you in your pursuit of happiness. So let me, if I'm going to do it right, I'm going to end. And I want to unmute you all if I can figure out how to unmute you all. There we go. Okay, thank you so much, you guys.
Thanks, Becky.
Thank you. Have a wonderful, wonderful night, and we'll see you all another time.
Thanks, Becky.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye.